Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
Good, Aubrey. How's it going?
Excellent. I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is the biggest culprit that keeps someone from being concise?
Honestly, probably using too many words. That's a big one. And
Absolutely.
and the more words we use, the less impactful each word becomes. So,
Yes, I am guilty of this. I will find
uh,
myself sort of saying something in a very wordy way. And in the
mhm.
middle, I'm like, I wish I could just start over and think about this and choose my words and make it more impactful.
Interesting. That's interesting insight. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. It happens to me sometimes too. Sometimes I just wish I could stop talking.
Right. How do I stop talking
Stop
without making it super awkward?
Yes, I know. So we're back for a series, part 2 of our 3-part series on how to be concise. Aubrey, what did we do on part 1?
Yeah, part one focused on how we can make our message concise through preparation and sharing only the most important details. So, we will share the episode number for that at the end of the episode. Stay to the end, but you can listen to these out of order. So, if you missed that
Yes.
one, stay to the end and then be sure to catch all three for this episode. Be sure to hit follow so you hear part three as well.
Yes, hit that follow button. Just go into whatever app you're listening in today and just hit follow, and then we'll drop right into your queue. Okay. All
Yeah,
right,
and we're
let's
talking
talk
about
a bit.
vocabulary today, right? Because
Yeah.
the vocabulary we use is also key to how concise our message is. We often need to eliminate unnecessary words and phrases. And like Lindsay and I were saying, we've all been there where as we're speaking, we're like, I should have said this differently. I maybe should have chosen different words. So
Yeah.
sometimes it takes thinking about it ahead of time. What types of words could we eliminate or what types of phrases should we change?
Yeah, exactly. And the first thing I want to say before we go into any of these vocab strategies, the only way any of this is going to work is by actually trying this multiple times, going out there and getting the raw speaking practice, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to have had multiple situations. In the first episode, I described a moment when I was moderating a panel that I just kept talking and I knew I was going in the wrong direction, but I couldn't stop because I was nervous. You have to have those moments to be able to correct and become more concise. We can't go from
Exactly.
not speaking ever to being perfectly
Yes.
concise,
Yeah,
right?
and we're never going to be perfect, right? We're giving you these great strategies
Yeah.
today, but there will continue to be times where maybe because of nerves, maybe because of language as we're learning, as we're getting better, it's not going to be perfect, right? But the
Yes.
more you think about language and the things that we can do to be more concise, the more you will be able to hone these skills.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. So let's get into our strategies, Aubrey. What are they?
All right. The first one is to cut filler words, right? These ums, us, likes, and other unnecessary fillers. Yes, we all do it, but they can dilute or distract from our message. So we do
Yes.
want to practice, especially when we're saying something we want to be impactful or powerful. We want to practice eliminating those fillers.
So we're practicing speaking without having those, right? We
Mhm.
can record ourselves. We can take notes about how many fillers we're using in any given conversation. What else can we do, Aubrey?
Yeah, we can also slow down our speech a little to have a bit of time to know what you are going to say next. This is often advice I give to our students in our courses.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have this idea that we need to speak really fast in order to sound more fluent. But
Yeah.
if we're not enunciating phonemes, these individual sounds, and if we don't have time to think of what we're going to say next, so then we have a filler sound or we're pausing and hesitating, we actually sound less fluent. So sometimes slowing down is the key.
Oh, it's so true. Because when we slow down, we also feel more in control. I think a big part of where filler words come out is when we feel a little out of control. And when we feel we slow down, we take control of the cadence, of the rhythm of what we're saying, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we're speeding up because we're nervous. Like you were saying,
Mhm.
Lindsay, when that happened, this happens to
Mhm.
me as well. If
Mhm.
I'm nervous, my speech will sometimes speed up. And then I find myself tripping over my words or not
Yeah.
knowing what to say next because I'm speaking too quickly for my brain to catch up.
Yeah, so do you have to find a way to cut off that pattern, right? It's like I said, it's like a train going off the tracks and you can't stop it, but you can stop it by taking a breath and just slowing down. Even if you feel like the other person, maybe you're being interviewed, maybe you're in a conversation, they're speaking fast, you can take control of the pace of the conversation, right?
Exactly. And this will take practicing ahead of time. You will need to practice speaking at a slower pace, knowing that if you're nervous, you're probably going to speed up from there. So you have to be intentional about this.
I love it. Number two, second strategy is avoid being redundant. and shorten your phrases. Okay, what does this mean practically speaking?
Yeah. So there are a couple things here, right? When we think about being redundant, is it about being repetitive? Of course, we don't want to repeat words or phrases. If we have sort of gotten our message across and we're just still talking and find ourselves just repeating ourselves, yes, we want to avoid that. But
Mm-hmm.
also, the vocabulary we're using can be redundant. So we have a
Mm-hmm.
few examples of phrases that you will hear, you might use sometimes. But if you're thinking about saving time or being more concise, there are often shorter options.
Yeah, like this one, due to the fact that imagine how many brain calories that takes to actually say that. It's a lot, Aubrey. It's a lot to
Exactly.
say that.
Right, if you're at work and someone says, "Due to the fact that," blah, like, I'm all, "Oh, man, we just
Uh,
could have saved ourselves 5 seconds there."
bad way, it's a bad way to start too because it gets you off on the
Totally.
wrong track, right?
Yeah, and you can replace that with the word because, right?
Oh,
So
so
sometimes we will elevate our language. We're trying to sound more polished, flowery, and sometimes we will end up using these phrases that have quite a bit more words. But if you want to be concise, you can replace that phrase with the word because.
I think the key for our listeners here is having the flexibility to pick and choose
Absolutely.
depending on are you presenting, new corporate guidelines or bylaws, then maybe yeah, you are using something boring like due to the fact that.
Right.
But if you're trying to convince anyone, pull them in, tell a story, persuade them because, right?
Exactly. Yes, right? I think
Yes.
about the story that I told in the last episode that we recorded together about when these teenagers called me Karen. Imagine if
Mm.
during that story I'm like, "Due to the fact that I was wearing flip-flops, they called me Karen." That would be so strange, right? It's
It'd
too
be weird.
formal, it's too
Yeah.
long. When you're wanting to engage someone in a story, and even at work sometimes we wanna be less formal, right?
Mhm.
Shorten the phrase, use because instead.
Yeah, I wonder what some other examples would be of this, Aubrey. What would be another one?
So, one good example is end result. These words mean the same thing. So, sometimes we'll hear people say the end result is, that's redundant, right? You can just say
Mm,
the
that's
result. The
true. Yeah,
result
hmm,
is,
that's a
yeah,
good point. I never thought about that. But
right.
it is. They essentially mean the same thing, these two
Right.
words,
Sometimes
right?
we do this, we just add words that are unnecessary, that are redundant. Another good example is each and every,
Oh,
right? Each already implies
cliche.
every. So, we don't need to say each and every. We just can say every or each.
It's like a double whammy here, right? It's
Yeah,
double bad because not only is it redundant, but it's a cliche too. So it's
totally.
really bad.
Yeah. Another good example is when someone says, "Let's collaborate together." Like, you can
Oh,
just say collaborate because in the definition, right, is already the fact that we're working together, so we don't
that's a
need that
really
word.
good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. I love it. So that's the second strategy. Avoid being redundant or shorten your phrases. What would be the third thing we could do, Aubrey?
Yeah, the third is to eliminate unnecessary qualifiers. So, as a language learner, you have likely seen this where people will say, "Don't say, very easy. Say this
Yeah.
instead, right? An adjective that's a more interesting word. So instead of
Yeah.
saying it's raining quite hard, maybe you say it's pouring, right? So these
Mhm.
qualifiers like very, quite, really, rather, there's usually
Yeah.
a more interesting word that would replace the qualifier and the other adjective.
Yeah, and this will help your score on IELTS too,
Yes.
right, Aubrey? If you're taking the IELTS exam, if you are taking the IELTS exam, you should be over listening to IELTS energy, by the way, right, Aubrey?
Absolutely, right? We have
Mhm.
episodes every week. Be sure to listen, especially if you're studying for IELTS. And I'm glad you're here as well because you'll learn a lot here on Allers English that helps you with the IELTS exam.
Yeah.
But this is one of those where if you say really or very all the time, low score on IELTS and a low score in life. Like, that's not an interesting conversation. There are more interesting words.
You're so right. Low score, it's true. People will just get bored, right? And the point is, we know that you guys have great stories to share. You want to connect. That's why we're here listening. That's why we learn English, in our opinion, right? And so
Exactly.
you have the material, you have the expertise, but don't let it get grayed out by using these words, these qualifiers that just bore people. Okay.
Right. A couple more examples. Instead of saying this is a very big problem, you could say this is an enormous problem. Or instead of
Nice.
she was really angry, she was
Mm-hmm.
furious. It
Yes.
usually makes your message more impactful to
Mm-hmm.
eliminate that qualifier and definitely makes your speech more concise.
And it's also more fun. It's kind
It's
of
more
more
fun.
fun to say
Yeah,
furious than really angry, right?
totally. I agree.
Yeah. All right, number 4. What should we do? What else can we do? Wow, we got a lot of
I
actionable things
know
we
a
can do
lot of
today.
tips
Yeah.
here. So, our fourth and final tip is to use stronger verbs.
Mm,
Replace be verbs whenever possible. This is
okay.
a minor change, but it is more concise and it often does make your
Mm,
message a little bit stronger. So, for
mm,
example, instead of saying, there is an opportunity, you could say, we have an opportunity.
mhm.
It's subtle, but it really does change the meaning and make it more concise.
It seems to make it more personal too, what we're doing
That too.
here, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, more
Yes.
about you and me, not about what's out there abstractly speaking, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Mhm. Or replace there are time-saving benefits to this versus and say this, we can now save time. Yeah, I like it. It's
Like you
funny
said,
because
more personal, right?
yeah,
But also more just like action that eliminate the abstract, eliminate
yeah,
this general way of
abstract.
speaking.
Yeah, it's like you would think that, the first one would be better because it feels more academic or more formal, but no, we don't learn language to be academic and formal unless we're writing a paper. We use
Exactly. If you're
words to
writing a
connect.
research paper or maybe a brochure, that's different.
Yeah, brochure,
That's
sure, for a very
this
boring
is more
company.
exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. All right, Aubrey, let's see what this looks like in a role play. So we are at a school board meeting. Oh, goodness. I hope I never go to a school board meeting. Uh,
I know I actually have never been to one, but I have a lot of friends that are on school boards or attend the
uh,
school board meeting. So I know
mm,
what they're like. Okay, I'll start us
oh,
out.
dramatic. Yeah.
Yes. I know everyone is swamped, so thank you for taking the time to be here. Because we only have 30 minutes, let's dive right in. Lindsay, we'll give you the floor for the first agenda item.
I have an announcement to start us out. Our grant was approved.
Oh, that's great news. I'm thrilled to hear that.
Nice. Concise over here,
Yes,
right?
we're
Very
being very
concise.
concise, right? Our first
Yes.
example, I said, I know everyone is swamped. I could
Uh-huh.
say very busy, or
Mm-hmm.
everyone has a lot on their to do list. There are many ways to say this that are a lot more words.
Yep.
Swamped is a great word, one word that means extremely busy.
Exactly. And then you said because we only have 30 minutes and we're eliminating due to the fact that or anything more wordy and more formal, right?
Exactly. I could say, due
Mhm.
to the fact that we only have 30 minutes. No, even though this is a pretty formal meeting, a school board
Right.
meeting, still save us some time because we have 30 minutes.
I know, right?
Because we only have 30 minutes, let's not say due to the fact that.
Exactly. It would be ironic, right? If you're
Yes,
wasting our
exactly.
time telling us we're going to be efficient. Yes. All right. Next one, Aubrey. I said I have an announcement to start us out. That's instead of what?
Yeah, you're replacing this with a be verb. Maybe there is an announcement, that more
Oh,
general, abstract way of talking, right? To
mhm.
make it more personal, like you said, Lindsay.
Personal is powerful, right?
Yes.
Personal is powerful. Yes. And then the last one, you said that's great news. I'm thrilled to hear that. And that's instead of what?
Yeah, very excited, right? Thrilled is a great word that replaces excited or happy
Yeah.
with a qualifier. And then you'll also
Wow.
notice there are no ums and uhs here, right? This is, even though it's a pretty informal meeting, we still are careful to eliminate those ums and uhs that are, it saves time, it makes your language more concise.
Yes, I love it. This is turning out to be a very high level series for our listeners, which I love. I love this. So, guys, go back and check out part 1 of this series, How to Be Concise, part 1, Direct Your Message. That is episode 2410. Okay.
Yes, scroll up if you missed it and be sure to hit follow so you don't miss part 3, which is all about how we can use our grammar to be more concise as well.
Oh, I'm excited for
Because
that.
I know I love that too, right? Not only do you need to think about your message, which we talked about in part 1, and the actual phrasing, your
Mhm.
vocabulary, also the grammar changes as well.
Yeah. Any final takeaways on words and how they play a part in being concise?
Yeah, they just play an enormous role, right? To
Yeah.
think about how it seems subtle, but really does make a difference. You will have an impression of someone as being someone who is concise and respects your time, depending
Mhm.
on the language, the vocabulary they use.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of this is consuming a lot of content, reading a lot, right? Reading the news, watching TV, watching movies. So then we have those vocabulary words that are more powerful, right?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Because in order to eliminate the qualifiers, you do need to know these maybe higher level, more interesting words that could replace very
Yes.
easy, very fast, right? What
Yeah.
are those more interesting adjectives?
Nice. Great stuff. Aubrey, can't wait for the next part 3 in this series. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome. See you there.
All right. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.